For me, I think the emergency fund was big because before I did FPU, I had no cash.
I will say baby step 3 was harder for us than getting out of debt.
There were a bunch of times where I thought, there is no way I'm gonna be able to do this all the way through to the end.
There were days that I was feeling like giving up, like I can't do this anymore.
There were some times that I was like, just come home. It's not worth it. But then we would look at our child and say, yes, we can.
Life's gonna happen. So it's nice to have it with a little bit of cash in your pocket when it does happen.
We've had a baby. My husband had jaw surgery, so we had to pay for braces.
He was laid off just in January. So a year after us getting out of debt, 1 year later, we were working on step 3.
For us, we kind of lost a little motivation a little bit because it was like, okay, well, that's behind us. Can we breathe now,
All right, up to this point, you have been gazelle intense about paying off your debt. You are finished with baby steps 1 and 2. Can you imagine being completely debt-free? Oh, such a great feeling. But I don't want you to go backward. I don't want you going back into debt. So that's why we do baby step 3, saving 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. Because here's the deal. Now that debt won't ever be a part of your life, saving is your only option. Because debt and saving are complete opposites. With debt, you pay interest. With saving, you earn interest. With debt, you take on risk. Savings lowers your risk. Debt steals your future. Saving secures it. With debt, you owe. With saving, you own. And there are so many things pulling at us in the present. And the practice of saving for the future can sometimes feel impossible. And for me, spending money is way more exciting. And I say that as a natural spender. But having nothing in savings totally stresses me out. I mean, the fear of a crisis honestly forces me to save. The fear that if something were to happen, will we be okay, makes me save money. That's why Winston and I have an emergency fund for our emergency fund because of me. And in fact, women's number 1 financial fear is the lack of security. Men, husbands, hello, did you hear that? Yes, that is your wife's greatest fear, more than likely. And you shouldn't live in fear of the next emergency. That's why the emergency fund is critical. Proverbs 21:20 says, "Now in the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but the fool devours all that he has." I like the Living Bible translation of this verse. The wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. And did you know that most Americans are acting like fools? Yeah, we do not save. Nearly 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They use debt to cover emergencies. So when the car breaks down, you go into debt to fix it. So it's no longer a car problem, it's now a money problem. And it's just a cycle. And here's the deal, you guys. Emergencies are going to happen. One year, Winston and I had a beach vacation planned. And the night before we were going to leave, he said his stomach hurt. This was around 9 p.m. And I was like, okay, well, here's some Pepto-Bismol. Like, see you in the morning. And then around 11 p.m., he was like, I can't lay down. Like, it hurts so bad. I need to sleep sitting up. And I was like, that doesn't sound good. And then about 2 a.m., he was like, I think we need to go to the hospital. Now, ladies, I don't know what your husband's like, but when Winston Cruz says he needs to go to the hospital, he's basically dying. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's go. Do we call an ambulance? And he was like, calm down. No, just get in the car, drive me to the hospital. So we go in. Turns out he had appendicitis. Had to go right into emergency surgery. He came out recovering, and I was like, oh my gosh, talking to the doctor. Everything was fine. I was like, hey, doc, listen, we were supposed to take a plane out of here in about T-1 hour. We're not going to make it, but can we still go to the beach? And he was like, well, true story. If Winston's man enough to go, you can go in about 24 hours. I was like, get the wheelchair. We're heading to the beach. I rebooked our tickets and we went. But what was so great about that was in that moment, I remember thinking for about 2 seconds, ooh, this surgery, all of this is going to cost a lot. But I didn't really worry about that part because I knew we had our emergency fund. So I could be present with Winston during that whole ordeal and be present enough to book airline tickets again. Because you have to realize the emergency fund gives you cash to cover emergencies so you stay out of debt. And the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you spend the way you've always been spending, you're never going to develop the habit of saving. And things do get a little bit more complicated if you're married because usually one of you is a spender and one of you is a saver. And you savers are so excited about this lesson. Well, us spenders are thinking, we're done with baby step 2. We're debt-free. We can finally spend what we want. Now, you should go out and celebrate, but keep the celebration to a minimum because I still want your foot on the gas. Both of you together need to agree that saving and baby step 3 has to be a priority. And you can save money if it's your priority. Now, this is true if you're married or single. If you could just imagine someone in your life that you love, maybe a child or a parent or a friend, and they became extremely sick. And the doctor said to you, I have medicine that will cure them, but it's going to cost $5,000 and you're going to have to get it in the next 2 months. And you're like, okay, $5,000 in 2 months. Now, if that's me, I have 2 little girls at home. And I'm like, if it's one of them, heck, I'm out of that hospital. I'm selling everything. I'm working extra. I mean, I am doing whatever I need to do to get $5,000. Because when you have this emotional reaction, you can do anything. If you want something badly enough, you can become a saver. But in today's world, it is so hard to save because you start to see what everyone else is doing. And we start to try to keep up with the Joneses. And what's so frustrating is keeping up with the Joneses 10 years ago, you actually had to see the Joneses in person. Now we just carry them around in our back pockets on our phones. And because of social media, you get this window, this picture into everyone else's life. I remember Winston and I were unpacking from a trip. We had just gotten back with his family. And his family took us on this amazing trip, all the kids. They paid for it. It was so generous. It was so great. And as we were unpacking, I was just kind of scrolling through Instagram. And that same week, some of our friends had just taken their daughter to Disney World. Now, Disney World and the Cruz household at that time was kind of a cuss word. It kind of was a point of tension for us because I love Disney World. And from the moment our oldest was born, I was like, we got to take her to Disney World. We got to go to Disney World. And Winston's always like, why are we going to spend so much money on something that they're never going to remember? Like, this trip would be for you, Rachel. I'm like, yeah, you're exactly right. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. And so it was always this point of like, oh my gosh, we want to go to Disney World. We can't, we're not going to. And as I was unpacking my suitcase from a trip, I was already comparing my trip to someone else's. And that was the moment I sat there. I was like, Rachel, what are you doing? But the comparison game is so real. And we have to be careful that comparisons don't just steal our joy in the present, but that they don't steal our paychecks as well. Because people will spend money they don't have to keep up a lifestyle that they think everyone else is living and they're missing out on. So how do we beat this comparison game? Well, the cure for comparisons is contentment. Now, the tendency when you're out of baby step 2 is that you've sacrificed so much to pay off your debt that you look at your list of wants and you start to say things like, I deserve. Like, we've worked so hard. I deserve this. And when you start to feel that way, you're going to start to struggle with contentment. And it's almost impossible to save money when you're not content. Philippians 4:11 says, I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. So instead of chasing of what you want next, you are satisfied with what you have. You will never learn to save if you don't first learn to be content. And gratitude will lead you to contentment. In a heart filled with gratitude, there is no room for discontentment and comparisons. So be grateful and thankful for what you have. And this is not apathy or laziness, but this is just being grateful for where God has you. And gratitude will let you thank God for the journey you're on and everything God has done for you. Baby step 3 isn't just about saving 3 to 6 months of expenses. It also deals with our hearts and our emotions. This step will allow you to keep pushing forward towards your financial goals while giving you the room to learn to be content and grateful for what you have. And that is true financial peace.
I remember being in the hospital, and we had just, at that moment, the month that she had gone in the hospital, we got to our 3 to 6 months. My wife and I met when I was 22 years old. Our finances, we did everything wrong. We were just choked, had no money, and all of a sudden, everything fell apart. It was just after Christmas. It was New Year's Eve, and Terry was cleaning up in the house, putting away everything. She felt something in her neck and came in. She actually came in and said, "Man, I can't wake my body up. I can't wake my body up." And she, in a matter of 2 hours, she became paralyzed. We don't know why. Just she stopped walking. Says, "I can't walk anymore." And I think back with my wife that through all that 3 years of getting out of debt, building out an emergency fund. And I think back that, even though she was a free spirit, but she was really committed to this. And I really never realized that somehow she knew that maybe she wasn't going to make it. And how she, did this for me. So over the next 3 months, she was in and out of the hospital and passed away in November. It was amazing because, through all that storm, through all the trials, I was able to sit there and not financially, literally, I could be off for 6 months and not have anything hit me, no financial worries. Nothing of that was of issue. We were able to focus with my kids, focus on her mom and go through that process with her. I think that was a huge blessing that we didn't really realize that we were preparing for.
Hello. How are ya? So good to see you guys. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Have a seat. So let's talk about this. The voice. Someone asked me, "Hogan, when did your voice change?" Well, it was age 13. Yeah. And can you imagine me trick-or-treating at your house? I scared people to death. Little kids would go back and say, "Mommy and Daddy, there's a grown man out there trick-or-treating." I'm not a grown man, I'm a child. Give me some candy, right? True story, I travel all over the country speaking on money, business, leadership, and this happened to me. So I'm in an airport. You can tell by my voice, I can't whisper. People, I've been banned in 48 of the public libraries in America, okay? I can't whisper. So I'm on the phone talking to my assistant, asking, she said, "Hey, how was the last gig?" I said, "It was great. I'm about to go to the next one." Well, there were these 2 little ladies sitting in front of me, little black lady and little white lady. And one of them said, "I know who he is," right? And I didn't think much about it because, with Financial Peace University, I do some media hits. And so I go on talking. Well, her girlfriend looked at her and they keep talking. Turns out they were going on a mission trip together to Vegas. Now, some of y'all been on that mission trip too, but we're not gonna talk about that today, right? But they're talking and she said, "I'm telling you, I know who he is." And her girlfriend said, "Girl, I know who he is. He's the man from those insurance commercials." That's not funny. Here's the deal. I travel so much, I know it's gonna happen again, right? You gotta have a plan. So the next time someone says, "Oh, he's the man from those insurance commercials," here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna turn and look at him and go like this. "Are you in good hands?" Watching you, I'm gonna run off. Now listen, with baby step number 2, you're gonna attack your debt. And get this, you're gonna give yourself a raise without having to go talk to anybody. You're not gonna have to talk to your leader. You're not gonna have to talk to your boss. You're gonna give yourself a raise because you're gonna get your money back. And once you do that, I have something else I want you to do, right? You gotta be intentional. Because here's the deal. Did you all know 8 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck? 8 out of 10. Now, I'm from Kentucky, so I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I thought that seems high. Like, that's 80%. Like, think of 10 of your friends, right? And some of you ain't got 10, borrow 2 from somebody, right? But think of 10 of your friends. According to this statistic, 8 of the 10 of your friends are living paycheck to paycheck. That means if one check doesn't show up, they have what's called a money situation. How many of you all have ever had a money situation? Yeah. And see, it's not fun. And you can't tell. You know why? Because people are dressed head to toe in Prada and Dolce & Gabbana and some other things I can't pronounce, and they look like everything's good. But that's not the truth. You know, the reality is that you get a lot of people that are looking like they're doing well, but they're not. But on the other side of this, you could also have somebody with some jeans on and maybe some boots with some mud on it, and they don't look like they got much. But I'm gonna tell you something, they got money. And see, 80% living paycheck to paycheck, if that's true with your friends, can you take it a step further? Think of 10 of your family members. You see, that's where that stat gets real. And so what we don't want to do is to pretend or look like we got money. Let's work a plan to get there. And so if you've gotten yourself out of debt, you gave yourself a raise. Well, I now want you to do the next baby step number 3. And this is to get a fully funded emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses put away to be able to protect you and your family. You see, it's so important to have that. And I want you to use the same intensity you used to get out of debt to build up this emergency fund. You see, the reality is if you don't have this, you know what ends up happening? You end up reaching for a credit card or to go sit down in front of a bank and wait on them to try to approve a loan, and you get judged. You see, you don't want that anymore. Or you know what else I found? If people don't have an emergency fund, they end up taking money from their 401k. And see, that's stealing from yourself, but it's also stealing from your future. And when you take money out of a 401k, you activate a whole lot of drama in your life. You could lose up to 30% in fees and penalties. And see, you end up stealing from yourself to cover a situation that you hadn't prepared for. And see, we don't want that drama. See, I want you to be prepared. So taking from your 401k, it's not wise. It's dangerous. Now, how many of you all have kids? Okay, how many of you have 2 or more? 3 or more? Oh, y'all fertile. Okay. Yeah, y'all got kids too. I got 3 boys. Okay, I've got one that's built like me, Tyson, one that thinks like me, Brock, and then the little one, Case, who looks like me. But my boys are hilarious. They love to ask me hypothetical situations, right? They want to know what dad would do, right? And they're hilarious. So they came to me about 2 months ago. They said, hey, Dad, we got a question for you. I said, no. They're like, how are you saying no? You don't even know what it is. I said, because y'all are all 3 smiling, right? That's like a conspiracy. I know something's about to go down, right? They're like, no, listen. They're like, okay, we want to know if you would ever bungee jump. I said, look at this body. I said, daggone it, I obey the law. Gravity's a law. I obey. I said, you mean to tell me you want me to tie a giant rubber band around me and jump off of a perfectly good bridge? No, it ain't gonna happen. I said, because something bad is gonna happen, one way or the other. I may pass out and have a heart attack before I hit the ground, you know? That's a terrible situation. They love to ask me that. But you know what? For a lot of us who are working hard to try to provide for our kids and provide for our family, if we don't have that safety net under us, if we don't have that preparation ready, then life can happen. And we've all been there. And so for me to bungee jump, I'm gonna need a parachute and 3 safety nets and a whole lot of firefighters down there holding nets, right? And I'm still not gonna do it. But an emergency fund for you can be like that safety net, and it can be a great opportunity. You see, we don't want drama in our life. What we want to do is make progress and chase down progress. So baby step number 3 is very, very vital for you to have for your life. Okay, it protects you. So walking through this, you think about it. How many of you have heard of Murphy's Law, right? See, that was what I was thinking about the bungee jumping. Murphy's Law states anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And the reality of this is we know in life, like watch this, raise your hand if you've had a car repair in the last 12 months. Okay, if your hand ain't up, you on the clock, okay? I ain't trying to put that on your car or nothing, but you know, a battery issue, a tire issue, and it can all happen, right? I mean, how many of you have had a car at some point in your life that caused you to pray a lot? You know what I'm talking about? You know that car where you come out of work and you start walking toward it and you're like, all right, car, look, I ain't got time for this today. Like, you do. You start talking to it, don't you? You're like, come on now, right? And you get in and you put the key in and you're like, ring, 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 right? And all of a sudden now all that stress comes on you, right? We've been there. We've lived that. And see, I think when you change things up and you get an emergency fund, it changes the pace of things. It changes it because now you don't have to get stressed because you've intentionally put some money aside to protect you. And so you don't need that drama or that stress, you just get prepared. You see, Murphy's gonna come around, he's always out there lurking, waiting to try to impact things. And I'm gonna tell you something, when you get an emergency fund, you know what? It protects you. And I watch the Weather Channel, right? And I mean, I'm amazed, right? The sunshine, but you and I know at some point it's gonna rain. And you know what? That emergency fund is a rainy day fund for you. Because now it's not a matter of if it's gonna rain, right? We know it's gonna rain. And the reality is that someone's like, Chris, you need to be more positive. I'm like, I'm positive it's gonna rain. And you know that too. And so instead of going backwards, I want us to chase down progress and start to do things that make sense. You see, we can make mistakes in the past, but I think when we think differently and we put ourselves in a different scenario, what we start to do is to move forward, and the goal is to be wiser. We don't want to repeat those same mistakes anymore. You want to move forward and move forward with confidence. Now, I've also been asked, well, Chris, how do you pick between 3 or 6 months of an emergency fund? And that's a very valid question. Here's the deal. The more unstable your income is, that means if you're self-employed or you're a commissioned salesperson or you're a single income household, I want you to rely more on a 6-month emergency fund. So that's money you're gonna tuck away, you're gonna put it in a money market account and let it sit there. See, the goal is for it to be liquid. Liquid simply means you can get to it when the need arises. Car repair, illness, job change, whatever it is, you've got money tucked away. But if your income is more stable, meaning if you're a dual income household, both of you are working outside of the home or making money, then now you could lean more toward a 3-month emergency fund. But the reality is, you need to hear me. Most people say, well, Chris, that's a lot of money just sitting there, right? Because you need to, if you're doing your every dollar budget, you know how much it takes for you to run your household on. Well, you simply multiply that by 3, right? Or multiply that by 6. So it's not about your income, it's your monthly requirement to take care of your household. See, an emergency fund is insurance, it's not an investment. Okay, now this is a shift and you need to hear me, so I need you all's help. At the count of 3, I want you to say, not an investment. You ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Not an investment. That money is insurance. So we just want it to sit there and to be ready whenever you need it. So you don't have that what if scenario. You don't have to get stressed out. You know that that money is sitting there. Now remember, a money market account is where I want you to park it. A money market account is going to give you a better rate of return than a regular savings account. And so any bank, any place where you're doing your checking or savings, they can do a money market account. Now, if you're married, you and your spouse need to identify what's an emergency. Okay, the pizza dude showing up, that ain't an emergency. Okay, the sporting goods shop having a sale, that's not an emergency. And so you actually want to talk about this and to be on the same page. If you're single or newly single, get an accountability partner, somebody in your life that loves you and wants you to be successful. And now you can talk about these things together and you can keep it and keep that money there and keep it prepared to save you if it needs to. Now hear me. This is the one mistake people are making with emergency funds. You've got it sitting there because it's insurance, not an investment, and you need it and you use it. Guess what people forget to do? Build it back up, right? So this is where you shut down everything. And you go, job 1 is to replace that $500 that we needed or that issue that we used it for. And I had a dryer die, okay, a few years ago. That joker died on me, you all. I'm telling you, I had a pair of socks in there drying for 2 days, okay? No, I ain't lying to you. I pulled the sock out. I could have blew on it and dried it faster than this dryer could have. And I shook it and duct taped it and prayed over it. This dryer had shut it down, right? And I remember my initial thought, right, was, oh man, what are we gonna do? And then I went, what do you mean what are we gonna do? We're gonna use the emergency fund because that's why it's there. So job one is if you use it, build it back up. Now, as parents, some of us need to learn this full sentence I'm about to teach you. Because have you all figured out kids always want something? Okay? They just do. And listen, I'm about to teach you a full sentence. Watch this. No. Yeah, you just tell them. Tell them no, right? And my boys, they were the kings of after church wanting to go eat, right? They wanted to go out and eat. And back when we were focusing on the plan initially starting, we used the cash envelopes. And if the envelope was empty, guess what? We didn't go do it. And so we come out of church and they're like, Dad, we want to go to a restaurant and eat. And I'm like, hold on, let me check the envelope. And I'd look in there and I'm like, uh-oh. I go, well, boys, we're going to a new restaurant. And they're like, what's the name of it? I said, it's called Mi Casa. And you should have seen their face. They're like, yeah, we're going to Mi Casa. And my oldest was looking at my middle son like this. You dummy, that means our house. That's true, that is. We're gonna shut that down. Because your emergency fund is not to be used for fun stuff. That emergency fund is in place to protect you. And I'm telling you, if you use the same intensity that you use to get yourself out of debt, you can build this emergency fund up, and I want you to protect it. That means don't let it fritter away. Don't look at it like a vacation fund. It's not a new couch fund. This money is sitting there so when your car acts up, you have a job change or an illness, you don't have to stress. You know this money is sitting there and it's ready to protect you.
So we've had all these huge expenses, but the beautiful thing is that we did not have to incur any additional debt, which is awesome.
To have cash in the emergency fund so that when things happen, because they do happen, to just pay for them, it's like, wow, that's crazy.
We have our emergency fund, and it's like we just really got our car back a couple weeks ago, and I didn't even think about it. I was like, we took our time getting the car to the shop because it just wasn't that big of a deal.
We got our full emergency fund, and literally the next day, Murphy came to visit. So it got knocked down by about $4,000 or something. It was painful, but that's why it's there.
At the end of the day, if I lose my job tomorrow, I'm gonna be okay. And I think before, I may have been scared to speak up and to say certain things because I needed my job. I don't feel that way now.
We got a tenant to do over $15,000 worth of damage to a house. But we had the cash set aside to do that. We're gonna be fine.
Now we're sitting here, we have our 6 months emergency fund, which is really nice to have because that's a great cushion. That afforded me to be able to stay off of work for 5.5 months with my baby.
He got laid off, and it wasn't this big panic. It wasn't this big like, oh my gosh, where are we gonna move? What are we gonna do? And he got a job offer right away, and he was even able to say to them, I need to decompress a little bit. Do you mind if I don't start for 2 or 3 weeks?
Things that we thought were not for us or that, we could not have or only rich people got that or, I don't know, whatever these things that you tell yourself, we see that if you work hard, if you commit to it, you can accomplish it.
The peace of mind you get is just, it's just overwhelming.
We've now gone through 3 lessons. And in the next lesson, we're gonna cover baby steps 4 through 7. Now, I know many of you are still on baby steps 1 or 2, and a life without debt and having some money in the bank seems like a long way off. But I don't want you to get defeated because baby steps 4 through 7 are where you really begin to change gears. It's where you move from right now to where you wanna be. This next lesson is where you get to look towards your future, set some goals, and see how all the sacrifices that you're making right now are gonna change your financial life. I want you to hear me. Your future is in your hands. You get to decide. It's up to you. Now, I know you've been working hard, but hear me, keep it going. It's gonna be worth it. This next lesson is where you get to start dreaming about the future you really want. Now it's time for your 1-minute takeaway. Write down one thing you're gonna do this week based on what you just learned. What's your 1-minute takeaway?